podcast of European Solidarity Network called European Stories from a Union of Volunteering. This is our fifth episode. My name is Alexandra. I have been a European Solidarity Corps volunteer in 2019. I've spent my long-term volunteering in Belgium, working for a youth organization. And at the moment, I am back in Hungary, where I am working. And I'm also volunteering as a board member for the European Solidarity Network, bringing you this podcast. And here is with me, Danielle. Welcome, Danielle.
Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel, and I'm from Italy. I have done my ESC project in Turkey long term, and currently I'm still in Turkey because I did another project, and I will be back to Italy in the next week. Nice to meet you all, and I hope you will enjoy our podcast. I'm volunteering with the European Solidarity Network as Alexandra, and I'm one of the founding members of the network.
Okay, so today we thought we would talk about interculturality, since most of the long-term volunteers and most of the people who are interested about European Solidarity Corps are moving to a new country, living there for a long time. And really, it's all about culture and cultures and different customs, different rules, different traditions. So our idea was to talk a little bit about this. And we would start off with basically giving you what we think interculturality means. So, Danielle, based on your experience, what would you say? What is interculturality for you?
Well, based on my experience, I think that interculturality means respecting each other despite the differences between the persons. And also, it's somehow accepting the differences because, for example, in my case, I'm Italian and I have done my volunteering project in Turkey, which is another country with another culture, another language. And in the beginning, for me, it was hard to adapt myself and because there was a different culture. But as I got into their culture, I started to see a different way of thinking, a different way of living life, and somehow I experienced this interculturality. For me, it means, first thing, it means respecting each other, learning from each other, and giving something back to each other. What about you? What do you think about this topic? What does it mean for you, Alexandra, interculturality?
Well, I think I agree with you on many points. Going from Hungary to Belgium, it was a huge cultural shock for me, but obviously not as big as I would have gone out of Europe. So I really think that in Europe, there are cultural differences, but they are not as big as when you would be going to, I don't know, let's say Africa or Asia. But still, there were these really small things that were giving me really like a hard time of realizing that, okay, this is a different way of living, a different way of existing. And for me, I would say interculturality means that we are not just living next to each other with different cultures, but we are willing to open ourselves up and learn, and then bring back what we have learned and incorporate it in our life. For me, a good example would be how Belgians are super focused on collecting the trash selectively. Of course, in Hungary, there is also initiatives, and we are starting to do the same thing, but not as seriously as they are doing in Belgium. Because in Belgium, in different municipalities and different towns, the way it works is that if you put something wrong in the wrong trash bin, they are just not going to take it from the street, and they just leave it there, saying that, okay, something is wrong, you need to fix it up, you need to change, you need to put the trash into another bin. And this seriousness, for example, is something that we don't do in Hungary. But I have seen it, I have learned it, I have understood it thanks to the people I was living with in Belgium. And now that I'm back in Hungary, I'm also kind of trying to do the same thing and trying to educate people about it. So I would say that interculturality means that you kind of end up being someone who is not just in one culture, not just, I don't just consider myself Hungarian anymore. I consider myself European. So I would say, yeah, interculturality is opening yourself up to new customs, new rules, new habits, and then trying to keep on hanging on to those.
Well, as I heard your story about interculturality, I can say to you my own experience, which is totally the opposite way. Like, for example, as you said, Belgian people are like selective and they respect the rule as they have to be done, things as they have to be done. And here, in the country where I am now, Turkey, people are like more easygoing. If there is a problem, they say to you, "Oh, don't worry, we are gonna solve it like somehow, someday, or whenever we will have some time." For me, in the very first time, it was really annoying because you are in another country. If you have a problem, you want to solve it, and I'm a kind of person. If there is something wrong, I want to solve it as soon as I can, so I can have time to do something else. And for me, it was somehow hard to adapting myself to this kind of way of thinking. But then I just realized that as soon as you understand the local culture, you try to enter inside of it, you see totally a different world. Because in Italy, I used to do everything, to solve everything by myself, and to be aware of the things that I could do and I couldn't do. But in here, for me, it was everything a challenge because every time there was something, I had to solve it like I had to put effort in it like 10 times more because it was harder. But I can tell certainly, as you also said, after I did my ESC project, I felt like more European because I felt like the European values are more embedded inside of myself because I feel like more attached to Europe, and somehow I really miss the Europe as well because now I'm in non-European country, and when you are out of Europe, you can feel like those differences differently. If you are in Europe, you do as your experience, you are like somehow inside of the same, let's say, lands because we are European Union. But that was the only thing that I noticed about these intercultural differences. And it was really good for me to experience such things.
Do you have a really fun story about differences in cultures? Or do you remember a moment, maybe when you arrived to Turkey and you were like, whoa, what's happening here?
Well, I do have it because, in here they are like a Muslim country. So they have like a religious holiday differently from the European ones. And for me, it was really interesting to see how people were during the Ramadan fasting, and they were not even drinking water or whatever. And I was like looking to them, and really, I was like telling to myself how they can do such thing. I mean, it's like okay, it's a religious holiday, but the way that they do that things, like they believe in such thing, for me was really awesome because I learned so many things from them. And also during that time, people were more kind because they were like sharing their food with each other. They were like helping each other, and it was something that for me it will remains in my memories. It's something that really impressed me, and I really liked it. What about you? Do you have any fun, interesting story about any differences in cultures?
Your story sounds really amazing. I think it's really like religious cultures. It's really good to be there and experience it instead of just hearing about it. For me, I guess the biggest cultural shock I had was not something Belgian, but during my ESC, I think halfway around it. So in 6 months in, I had the chance to give a workshop for Chinese students, Chinese university students, to a summer university, and they were kind enough to invite me to a very traditional Chinese restaurant there in Brussels, and they were all there. So it was, I think, around 30 to 40 Chinese students, and then the organizers and me as an invited guest. And we had like this very, I think, very traditional and very typical Chinese dinner. And that was something for me, a super, super strange experience, but it was also great. Not just because I could taste Chinese food, very authentic, not the way they make it in Hungary, but like a very authentic Chinese cuisine. But I could also see how they are with their table manners and what they do during a dinner. And for me, who was raised in Hungary, where we are very, let's say, very polite and very clean when we are eating, it was a super, super strange experience seeing these giant rice bowls being passed around and people sometimes eating with chopsticks and eating with their hands and just having super, super fun time. It was something that I was really surprised, and it was really a moment where I was thinking, oh, okay, the world is so much bigger than Europe. So I would say that that was like the funniest moment that I had, because it was something that I was not expecting at all. Since we were in Brussels, even though I know we were going to a Chinese restaurant, I was not expecting this level of, let's say, authenticity. So yeah, it was super cool.
That's really nice to hear from you. And in a culture, there are some different aspects of it, and the aspect of the food and other things. For example, for Italian people, it's so important the aspect regarding the food. And I can tell you one more story about it here that I lived here in Turkey. For example, when I moved in here, I couldn't find any Italian food like the one that I was willing to try. And somehow I waited like more or less 2 months. And then, we Italian drink a lot of coffee. And then one my friend just brought me the mocha pot for making coffee. And he said, "Oh, you can make now Italian coffee." And, I was so happy about that thing, a foreigner, which gives the mocha pot to one Italian. It's somehow, he could understand my own, the thing that I was missing from my country. And when I got that things, I felt like, oh, this is something really great because, as I said in the beginning, interculturality means also giving something to each other. And that thing, that gift that was given to me, for me was really a great thing, a great memory, because he could respect my culture and he could give to me something from my own country.
Mm. Yeah, I also think that somehow being intercultural also means that you become more aware of your own culture. I agree with you completely. I also remember missing Hungarian food, Hungarian spices, Hungarian dishes. And when my mom came to visit me and brought me some stuff, I remember actually cooking for the office, like very traditional Hungarian things, and also giving them sweets from Hungary. And I remember being so proud and so Hungarian at that moment. So I also think that you cannot be intercultural without being okay and being aware of your own culture. That's also something that you kind of learn when you're in another country to just think back about those things from Hungary that you're missing, or from your own country that you're missing and you're proud of, and you really, yeah, it makes it more valuable, I guess, your own culture as well, not just the new culture. Okay, so I think what would be nice, we are actually coming up slowly to the end of our discussion, but I think what we could still maybe mention is how you can be more aware of this interculturality. And if you have any tips or tricks for people who are just about to go abroad or planning to go abroad to do their European Solidarity Corps project, do you have any advice for them to become more intercultural?
Well, I do have. And the very first thing, for example, before coming to Turkey for my EVS project, I heard a lot of stereotypes, a lot of stories, a lot of things which are like somehow legends. And when I came to this country, I saw that all the things that were told to me were not true. I mean, they were like somehow legendary stories. And when you go to another country, you have to put aside all the stereotypes, all the things that you heard, and you have to you have to immerse yourself into the new culture and try to understanding it. That's the very first thing. As well as when you are in another country, you have always to remember your own country's culture, your own value, and try always to find a meeting point between your culture and the culture of the country where you are going. That's the very first advice that I would give to somebody which is going to another country. And I think it's the best one because, when you go to another country, you see firstly that you are not speaking the same language. So that's the very first barrier. But if you find a meeting point between everything, I think you will have really great time, as I had. And what about you? What's the very first advice, or what would you tell to somebody which is going to another country for their project?
I think my advice would be to be super open, to be ready for everything and anything. Because one thing is for sure that whatever you're expecting, it's not going to happen. Something else is going to happen. And I think it's miraculous what will happen. Because for me, one of the biggest learning of my own ESC project was that actually it's good when things are not going the way you were expecting them to be. And I think that also comes back to interculturality. You kind of expect how it's going to be in a country where they are speaking the same language. You kind of expect that there will be different tastes, different food, different custom, different holidays. But one thing that you cannot be prepared is that it's all so different. And I think it's interesting. What you have to prepare yourself is that you cannot be prepared for everything. But you need to be, I guess, open, or I needed to be super open, super curious. And I kind of enjoyed being, at the first couple of months, I considered myself a child. You know how children in the kindergarten are super curious and always asking you questions and always asking you, but why do you do that? Why is that like that? And I was kind of similar to that. I was really always asking questions, always trying to figure things out, always looking into things. And I really think another big advice that I would give is just to try to immerse yourself with locals. Try to find the people who are really living there, who have been living there for their whole life, not just because they will show you how their culture is, but also because you can show them how your culture is. And for me, that's really interculturality, just showing each other different things that you do, different thoughts that you have, different beliefs, different values. And I think for people who have been in the same place for a long time, you bringing a new attitude, a new mindset can be as much of a learning as it is for you to immerse yourself in their culture. So yeah, I would say communication and openness, trying to find the right people, and really just being curious.
I totally agree with what you said, and that's really one of the greatest advice that one person which is going to another country can get. And from our experiences, I think that people would get more, let's say, motivated into going to another country, experience new culture, and trying to learn from the new culture. And I think this is something really great. If I knew, for example, something more about one country, or if I had the opportunity to, get such inspiration from somebody, I would definitely be thankful for such things.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And actually, that means also that our time is up. So just for the people listening to us, thank you. We hope that we gave you some really useful advice. And you can always reach out to USN, European Solidarity Network, and ask your questions. And we promise to help you in one way or another. And of course, stay tuned and check out the rest of the episodes if you haven't done it. And let's hope that at one point we will meet somehow, somewhere.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Danielle, for being here with me.
Thank you for inviting me for this podcast. And we hope that we gave you some inspiration and some motivation to take part to any European Solidarity Corps project. And you can always reach us in our European Solidarity Network page.